On the morning of April 17, 2012, a 60-year-old woman walked into a small-town city hall in Illinois, the way she had for 42 years. The FBI was standing at her desk. To understand why this morning broke an entire town, you have to see her the way they saw her. Dixon, Illinois, population 15,000, Ronald Reagan's hometown. The kind of place where the bank teller knows your kids' names, where nobody locks their doors. She'd worked in City Hall since she was 17, ran the town's money for 28 years, never missed a deadline, never took a sick day. The auditors signed off on her books, 22 years in a row. The bank held her accounts for decades. Mayor after mayor shook her hand and called her indispensable. Because for 22 of those years, she was robbing them. $53.7 million, the largest theft by a city official in American history. Not in New York, not in Chicago, in a farm town with one high school. Bernie Madoff stole from millionaires who chased a return. Rita stole from 15,000 people who trusted her at church. That's $3,500 taken from every single person in Dixon, every retiree, every kid. And the evidence was never hidden. No vault, no offshore accounts. It stood in a pasture on the edge of town, in broad daylight, wearing championship ribbons, while the whole town cheered for it. One more thing. She's free right now. Stay with me. Because how she did it is not even the good part. The good part is why nobody looked. And when you see it, you're going to think about someone you know. In the fall of 2011, Dixon, Illinois is broke. Not dramatically broke, small town broke. The kind of broke that shows up in the potholes nobody fixes, in the street projects that get pushed to next year and then the year after that. City workers go without raises. Department budgets get trimmed and trimmed again. And every year, when the council asks where the money went, the answer comes from the same calm voice at the same desk. "The state," she says. "Springfield is late with our money again." Everyone nods. Illinois in 2011, of course the state is late. It makes sense. That's the thing about a good lie. It doesn't sound like a lie. It sounds like the thing you already believe. The woman giving that answer has run Dixon's finances for so long that no one can really remember the office without her. Rita Crundwell, comptroller, treasurer, the person who knows where every dollar lives. And there's a particular sting to all this belt-tightening if you know the town. Because Dixon isn't just any small town. This is Ronald Reagan's boyhood home. The house he grew up in is a museum here. His statue stands downtown. The man who built a political career on one idea, that government wastes your money, learned to swim in the river that runs through this town. Dixon believes in tight budgets the way other towns believe in football. Careful with a dollar, suspicious of waste, proud of it, which is what makes the next 20 minutes so hard to watch. Because while this careful, frugal, skeptical little town was cutting street repairs to save a few $1,000s, it was hemorrhaging millions, every single year, from the inside. The council members aren't stupid. The mayors weren't stupid. Dixon runs on a commission system, a handful of part-time commissioners with day jobs overseeing departments in their spare hours. The system is built lean on purpose. Less government, lower cost. The trade-off is that the details, the wire transfers, the reconciliations, the account statements, all of that lives with one full-time professional. And in a few weeks, that professional is going on vacation. Remember that. It matters. Rita Crundwell was 17 years old when she first walked into Dixon City Hall. A work program, high school credit, filing, typing, answering phones. She never really left. She was good, genuinely good, organized, precise, always early, never sick. the kind of employee every small office dreams about. When something needed doing, Rita did it. When something needed finding, Rita found it. In 1983, Dixon made it official. Comptroller and treasurer. Both jobs, one person. Now, in a big city, that sentence would set off alarms. Money coming in, money going out, and the books that record it, all in the same hands. Accountants have a name for this. They call it a lack of segregation of duties. It's the first page of every fraud textbook ever written. But Dixon isn't a big city. Dixon is 15,000 people who all know Rita. The commission form of government they run is lean by design. A handful of part-time commissioners, each with a day job, and the details left to the professionals. And the professional was Rita. For 7 years, as far as anyone knows, she did that job honestly. Then, in December of 1990, she opened a bank account. Here's the entire crime. Ready? It fits on an index card. At Fifth Third Bank, Rita opens an account in the city's name. On the paperwork, it's called the RSCDA, the Reserve Sewer Capital Development Account. Say it out loud. It sounds like infrastructure. It sounds like the most boring account ever created. It sounds like exactly the thing you'd never ever ask about. But look closer at the checks. RSCDA, care of Rita Crundwell. One signature required, hers. Now the machine only needs fuel, so she builds invoices, fake ones, from the state of Illinois for sewer projects that don't exist. The city pays the invoice, the money moves into the RSCDA, and from there, it's hers. When the auditors come each year, the paperwork is waiting for them. Neat, complete, filed by the most reliable woman in the building. And notice what she chose. Sewers. Not roads, people see roads. Not parks, people walk in parks. Sewers are the one piece of a town everyone pays for and no one ever looks at. You can't drive past a sewer project and think, hang on, I don't remember that getting built. The whole category is invisible. Capital development, reserve funds, state reimbursements. It's the vocabulary of the most tedious meeting you've ever sat through. That was the camouflage, not darkness. Boredom. Fraud examiners will tell you the best hiding place in any organization isn't a shell company in the Caymans. It's the line item that makes people's eyes glaze over. Rita found Dixon's and she parked 22 years inside it. Over those years, she would create 159 of those invoices. Think about the discipline in that number. That's an invoice every few weeks on average for 2 decades. Formatted right, numbered right, timed right, big enough to be worth it, small enough to disappear into a municipal budget. She never got greedy in any single moment. She got greedy the way erosion gets greedy. Patiently. She starts careful. 1991, her first full year, $181,000. Nobody notices. So the next year there's more, and then more. By the 2000s, she's averaging over $2.5 million a year. In 2008, her best year, $5.8 million. $5.8 million in 1 year. From a town that was patching potholes on credit. And not one person asked a single question. Why would they? The sewer account had paperwork, and Rita had something better than paperwork. She had a reason to be rich. You can't steal $2 million a year and hide it under a mattress. Sooner or later, stolen money wants to be seen. Rita didn't hide it. She bred it. Quarter horses, show horses, the best in America. What started as a hobby farm on the edge of Dixon grew into an operation with hundreds of animals, professional trainers, and a name that meant something at every show in the country. And they won. Not sometimes, always. 52 world championships, 767 trophies. For years, she was the leading owner and breeder in the entire American Quarter Horse Association. There were seasons where the sport more or less belonged to her. She drove between shows in a $2.1 million motor coach. There was jewelry, property, the works. Let me put that motor coach in context, because numbers this size stop meaning anything after a while. $2.1 million. For the vehicle she slept in at horse shows. That one purchase, is more than some of Dixon's entire annual street budgets in the lean years. The town was deferring road repairs measured in tens of thousands of dollars, while its comptroller's ride to the horse show cost $2 million. And the scale kept compounding because champion horses aren't jewelry, they're factories. A world champion mare produces foals worth 6 figures. Her operation wasn't just spending stolen money, it was breeding it. By the mid-2000s, Rita Crundwell wasn't a rich hobbyist in the quarter horse world. She was the quarter horse world. The name on the trophies, the standard everyone else measured against. Year after year, the leading owner in the nation. There's home video footage from those years. Arena lights, applause, a woman in a sequined show jacket accepting another world title like it's routine. Because for her, it was. Watch her face in those clips, knowing what you know now. There's no fear in it. None. 20 years into an active federal crime, and she looks like the calmest person in the building. That's what 22 years of not being asked a single question does to a person. Oh, and one more thing about the horses. They all had show names. Registered, official, printed in the programs. She named one of them. Have faith in money. I'm not making that up. The Associated Press reported it from her own ranch. She was telling everyone. Nobody was listening. Now, you're sitting there asking the obvious question. How does a city employee, public salary, public job, small town, parade around the country with the most expensive horse operation in America, and nobody blinks? But that's hindsight talking. Walk through it the way Dixon walked through it. The horse business looked successful because it was. Champions earn breeding fees. Foals from champion lines sell high. Everyone in town could see the operation was winning. Obviously, the operation paid for itself. Her city salary was just the day job. Rita was just good with money. Of course she was. She'd been managing the whole town's money for decades. The local paper wrote up her championships. Neighbors bragged about her. The town was proud of her. Sit with that for a second. The evidence was 400 horses standing in a field, and Dixon was proud of it. Every fraud dies the same way, not with a detective, with a small, boring accident. Here's Dixon's accident. In late 2011, Rita takes time off. A lot of it, around 16 weeks unpaid, to be with the horses. Show season. She's done it before. The city's fine with it. Rita's earned it. And while she's gone, somebody has to mind the books. That job lands on the city clerk. Her name is Kathy Swanson. Understand, Kathy isn't investigating anyone, she's covering a desk. And at some point, doing perfectly ordinary work, she calls Fifth Third Bank and asks for something perfectly ordinary. Send me the statements for all of the city's accounts. All of them. The bank does exactly that. And in the stack, there's an account Kathy has never seen. Not once. Not in years of closing the books beside Rita every month. RSCDA. She reads the transactions. City money coming in and going out. Horse feed, vet bills, trailers, jewelry, a motor coach. Kathy Swanson is standing in a small-town office, holding a piece of paper that says the most trusted woman in Dixon has been robbing it. Maybe for years. She can't know how long. She can't know it's $53 million. Nobody knows that yet. She could put the paper back in the pile. You understand that, right? Rita controls her paycheck. Rita is beloved. Being the accuser in a town of 15,000, that costs you something. And if she's wrong, she doesn't put it back. She takes it to the mayor, Jim Burke.
Right at that doorway, and when she came to me with this bank statement, and she said, "This is not the city of Dixon's." She said, "I'm not sure what to do with this."
And picture his evening, because it deserves a moment. A small-town mayor holding proof that the person who has controlled every city account for a generation, the person whose numbers he has repeated to the public, budget after budget, has been stealing. He doesn't know for how long. He doesn't know how deep. He knows one thing for certain. If he's wrong about this, or if he handles it wrong, it destroys him. And if he's right, it might be worse. He doesn't call a lawyer. He doesn't call the council. Councils leak. He calls the FBI.
We started discussing it. At that point, I literally got sick to my stomach. And I told him, I said, "I hope that you're able to look into this." We talked on a weekly basis.
And then Dixon's story does something almost unbearable. Nothing. For 6 months, the FBI builds its case in silence, quietly pulling records, following the money backward through 2 decades of statements, watching the account. Which means for 6 months, Kathy Swanson and Mayor Burke come to work, say good morning to Rita, sit in meetings about budgets they now know are fiction, and keep her secret from her.
By cell phone before she ever got here in the office. They wanted to make sure that she was here, so I set up a phony meeting with Rita that she verified verbally and by email that she would be here for a 9:15 meeting about the Reagan CDs and DVDs, because they absolutely didn't want to put this all together, come swooping in here.
Think about the acting job. Rita deceived the town for 22 years, and to catch her, 2 of the most honest people in it had to deceive her for 6 months. The clerk guards the comptroller, the whole town sleeps soundly, and the account keeps quietly filling.
So over the last 6 months, you watched her pull out that $3 million.
We did.
So you knew every...
There's one more twist of the knife in this stretch. Rita controlled the payroll. Kathy Swanson's paycheck, the whistleblower's paycheck, was signed every 2 weeks by the woman she was helping the FBI take down. If Rita ever suspected, Kathy would have known within 1 pay cycle. She never suspected. Why would she? Nobody had checked in 22 years. That was the whole point. Until the morning of April 17th, 2012, when Rita Crundwell walks into City Hall and the FBI is standing at her desk.
On the intercom, and I called Rita, and she said, "Yes, sir," just like she always does when I call her on the intercom. I said, "Can you stop back in the office here?" So she came back and came right in the office, said good morning to everybody, and I was watching her closely.
The initial charge that day mentions $30 million, and the town can't even process that number. $30 million. From Dixon. It sounds like a typo. It was a typo, in the wrong direction.
I said, "Sure." I was looking at her face. There was absolutely no change of emotion over her face or anything. They questioned her for 2 hours, and then they put the handcuffs on her and they took her out that door, right through the council chambers, down the steps to...
The real number was still counting. The FBI adds it up. $53.7 million since 1990. The largest municipal embezzlement in American history. Not in New York, not in Chicago. In a farm town with 1 high school. And now comes the question this whole film exists to ask. Who was supposed to catch her?
$53 million of taxpayer money over a period of 22 years.
You know, in that length of time, we've had 5 city councils, 3 different finance and accounts commissioners, 3 different mayors, and 22 audits over that period of time.
Door 1,
wait a minute. Not
the
one
auditors.
person noticed.
Dixon paid accounting professionals to review its books every single year. 22 years of clean opinions, while a third of the city's money walked out the back. When it was over, the auditing firms paid Dixon tens of millions to settle what the lawsuits said about their work. Door 2. The bank. The RSCDA account lived at Fifth Third for 2 decades. A municipal account in a city's name, paying for show horses and diamonds. The bank settled too. Door 3. The state of Illinois, whose name was on 159 invoices it never sent, for sewer work nobody ever did. And understand what clean opinions means in practice. Every year, professionals with letters after their names sat down with Dixon's books. Every year, the fake invoices were in the file, waiting. A phone call to Springfield. One call any year to ask about one invoice ends everything. The call was never made.
Wait a minute. Not one person noticed that $53 million was missing from the city budget? Nearly 22 years of missing money, and not one person noticed. You know, this all adds up to $200,000 per month over the course of all of those years.
The invoice said State of Illinois, the file said Rita, and the file was always fine. This is the part that should genuinely unsettle you, more than the horses, more than the motor coach. The fraud wasn't sophisticated. Investigators and fraud examiners have said as much for years. It's taught in accounting classes now precisely because of how simple it was. No offshore accounts, no hacking, no forged wire chains. A checking account, a rubber stamp of a story, and a stack of homemade invoices. $53 million doesn't require genius. It requires 22 years of nobody looking. Auditors, bank, state, 3 locks on the vault. And the truth is, none of them ever really turned their key, because at every desk, at every level, the file had the same invisible sticker on it. This is Rita's paperwork. Rita's been here forever. Rita's fine. Here's the sentence I want you to take out of this video and into your Monday morning. Trust is not a control.
Choice. I mean, we couldn't blow the whistle on that and ruin the FBI's case, and we knew it was gonna take a while. Certainly, Ronald Reagan said one time, you know, trust.
Trust feels like a control. It feels like the best one, better than rules, better than paperwork. But trust doesn't verify anything. Trust is the reason you don't verify. And a system where one respected person holds every key isn't protected by their honesty. It's betting everything on it. Dixon bet for 22 years. Every town its size makes the same bet, every day, on somebody. Most of them just haven't checked yet. What do you do with 400 stolen horses? You sell them. All of them.
All this high.
We gotta go 300. Now 350. Now 400,000. Now 600,000. We can go 600,000. Now 625. 675,000. Now 700. We can get 700.
In the fall of 2012, the U.S. Marshals turned the Crundwell Ranch into the strangest estate sale in Illinois history. Horse people fly in from all over the country, because whatever else this is, it's the finest quarter-horse bloodstock collection in America, and it's going on the block at once. Buyers walk the barns with catalogs, inspecting animals they've watched win world titles on television. Some of them are crying, not for Rita, for the horses. An empire like this took a lifetime to breed, and it's being dismantled in an afternoon. And on the other side of the fence, there are people from Dixon, just watching. Regular people whose swimming pool stayed closed, whose street stayed broken, watching their money walk past them one animal at a time, wearing a lot number. The horses bring millions. The $2.1 million motor coach, sold. The trailers, the saddles, the jewelry, sold. 767 trophies and 122 plaques. 22 years of applause, boxed up and sold to strangers. The auctions and asset sales claw back several million. The settlements with the bank and the auditors bring back around 40 million more. In the end, and this is genuinely rare in fraud cases, Dixon recovers most of the money. It never feels like winning. Because in February 2013, In a federal courtroom, the town finally hears everything at once. 22 years, 159 invoices, $53.7 million. The judge gives Rita Crundwell 19 years and 7 months. Dixon changes its rules. The books get real oversight. The duties, finally, get separated. Kathy Swanson, the clerk who pulled the statement, is honored by the Fraud Examiners Association with an award they give to whistleblowers. The story has an ending. A clean one, even. Had. Remember the beginning of this film? I told you she's free right now. Here's how. In 2021, during the pandemic, Rita Crundwell was moved from federal prison to home confinement. Standard COVID-era policy. Thousands of low-risk inmates went home the same way. Then, in December 2024, the White House announced the largest single-day act of clemency in American history. Around 1,500 people on pandemic home confinement had their sentences commuted, signed by President Biden. On that list, between names nobody ever heard of, the woman who committed the largest municipal theft in American history. Her sentence had 5 more years to run. Gone. The conviction stands. It wasn't a pardon, but the punishment is over.
She was convicted of the largest municipal embezzlement more than 10 years ago, went to federal prison, then was let out early given house arrest during COVID. Now she is free. So if you don't remember the name, you
Dixon's
may remember
officials
the
called
pictures.
it
The now
not
71-year-old
justice. Residents called it a slap in the face. A local lawmaker put out a statement saying he was outraged and asking publicly whether the town would ever see the rest of its restitution. And that's where it ends. Not with a verdict, with a shrug from history. So, back to the sunny little town where nobody locks their doors. Dixon rewrote its accounting rules because Dixon learned its lesson the expensive way. But the lesson was never really about Dixon. Somewhere near you, your town, your company, your church, your family business, there is a person everyone trusts completely. Been there forever, handles the money, never takes a sick day. Statistically, they're honest. Statistically. But nobody's checking. Because checking would feel like an insult, and that feeling, that exact feeling, is what $53 million walked out of this town inside of. Quietly, for 22 years, behind a word as boring as sewer. The next case is already sitting in a drawer somewhere. Another case from the Money Morgue.